The war had lasted 18 months. 18 months. Of fire and death and the slow breaking. Of a world that had never asked for conflict. Commander Silith stood in the underground bunker and watched the screens. Each one showed a different view of destruction. The Corvani. Dropships fell from the sky like metal. Rain, their engines burned orange against the purple clouds of Vanthos. Soon they would land, soon the killing would begin again. Silith's crystalline skin caught the dim light of the bunker. All Valency had this skin. It was beautiful. The other species always said, like living gemstones, but beauty meant nothing against plasma rifles and orbital bombardments. Beauty could not stop an army. Commander, said a young officer named Turth, the Eastern District has fallen. Resistance Group 7 is no longer responding. Silith closed her eyes. Group 7 had held that position for 2 weeks. 40 brave souls. Now they were gone. Added to the count of the dead, that count had grown too large to speak aloud. Valenthi had never been warriors. For 3,000 years, they had built a civilization of art and music and deep thought. They had believed that all conflicts could be solved through words. They had sent diplomats to 100 worlds. They had helped end wars between other species. The galaxy had called them wise. The Corvani hegemony had called them weak. The hegemony wanted the rare minerals beneath the surface of Vanthos. They wanted the strategic position of the system. Most of all, they wanted to show the galaxy that no one could stand against their power. The Valenthi had sent diplomats to negotiate. The Corvani had sent those diplomats back in boxes. The invasion began 3 days later. Silith remembered the first attacks. The Valenthi defense fleet had been small but proud, elegant ships designed more for exploration than combat. They had faced the Corvani armada with courage that bordered on madness. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, every Valenthi ship was burning wreckage. The Corvani had lost only 12 vessels. Now the resistance hid underground like animals. 40,000 fighters across the entire planet. Some had military training. Most were teachers, artists, scientists who had picked up weapons for the first time in their lives. They fought because surrender meant death. The Corvani did not take prisoners. Show me the orbital view. Silith commanded. The main screen changed. 200 Corvani warships hung in space above Valanthos. They moved in perfect formation, their dark holes blocking out the stars. Debris from the Valenthi fleet still floated among them. Corvani had not bothered to clear it away. They wanted everyone to see what happened to those who resisted. Silith had sent messages to every major power in the galaxy. She had begged for help. The responses had been the same everywhere: regret, sympathy, refusal. No one wanted to anger the hegemony. No one wanted to risk their own people for a dying world. The Valens were alone. Commander Turth said. His voice sounded strange. I'm receiving a transmission. It is. I do not understand it. From the Corvani. No, from outside the system. The signal is weak. It took months to reach us. Turth's hands moved across his console. It is a response to one of our distress calls, the one we sent to the humans. Silith felt a cold disappointment in her chest. The humans, she remembered approving that message. It had been an act of desperation sent to every species they had ever contacted. The humans were new to the galactic community. They had only achieved faster than light travel. 20 years ago, their territory was tiny. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards. What does it say? Turth read from his screen 2 words only, we're coming. Hold, a bitter laugh escaped Sileth's throat. Around her, other officers looked up from their work. Some had heard the message. She saw hope flicker in their eyes, and she hated that she would have to crush it. The humans, she said, have one colony beyond their home world. They have a fleet of perhaps 50 ships, most of them small. They are located on the far side of explore space. Even if they sent every vessel they have, it would take months to arrive, and when they did arrive, the Corvani would destroy them in hours. But Commander, it is a kind thought, Sileth interrupted. Perhaps they truly intend to come. Perhaps this is a trick. Interference from the Corvani to give us false hope. It does not matter. Help is not coming. It has never been coming. We must accept this truth. The bunker fell silent. On the screens, more dropships descended toward the capital city. The ground forces would reach the civilian shelters by morning. When they did, thousands more would die. Sileth turned away from the screens. She could not watch any longer. Continue monitoring all frequencies, she ordered, and prepare the evacuation routes. We will fall back to the mountain bases tonight. She walked through the bunker, past rows of exhausted fighters. They had been awake for 30 hours. Some slept at their stations, heads resting on consoles. Others cleaned weapons that would soon run out of ammunition. Medic treated a young male whose arm had been burned to the bone in the last attack. These were her people, artists and dreamers forced to become soldiers. They looked to her for guidance, for hope. She had none left to give. In her private quarters, Sileth sat on the cold floor and allowed herself one moment of weakness. Tears fell from her eyes, small and sparkling like diamonds. That was another thing about the even there. Grief was beautiful. She thought about the human message were coming. Hold, such simple words, such an impossible promise. Somewhere far across the stars, a species she had never met was supposedly flying to help her dying world. Sileth wanted to believe it. She wanted to believe that someone in the galaxy still cared about justice, but she had seen too much death to believe in anything anymore. Tomorrow would bring more battle, more loss, more funerals for those lucky enough to receive them. The outcome was already sealed. Everyone knew it. The Corvani knew it. The galaxy knew it. Soon it would be over, and the Valanthi would join the list of species that had existed once and existed no longer. Sileth wiped her tears away and stood up. She had work to do. Her people needed her, even if all she could offer was a peaceful end. She did not know that 12 ugly ships were already racing toward her world. She did not know that everything was about to change. Admiral Vriath stood on the command deck of his flagship and smiled. The smile showed all 3 rows of his teeth. His gray scales gleamed under the harsh lights. Victory was close now. He could taste it. Below him, the planet Venthos turned slowly in the void. Fires burned across its surface. Cities that had stood for 1,000 years were now ash. The resistance fighters still hid in their holes, but they were running out of food and weapons. 2 more weeks, perhaps less, then the would be finished, and Vrith would return home as a hero. Admiral said his sensor officer. The final assault preparations are complete. Ground Commander Heskin reports his forces are in position. Around the capital, excellent Vrith clasped his clawed hands behind his back. Tell him to begin at dawn, I want. The underground shelters cleared by sunset, no survivors. The Corvani did not believe in mercy. Mercy was weakness. The hegemony had conquered 37 worlds with this philosophy. Each conquest made them stronger. Each dead enemy was a message to the galaxy, submit or die. Vrith had commanded 7 of those conquests. His record was perfect. No failures, no retreats. The High Council had given him this assignment because they knew he would not disappoint them. Snorts they Valanthi were soft creatures, famous for their weakness. Crushing them should have taken weeks, not months, but the crystalline fools had fought harder than expected. They had hidden, they had ambushed, they had refused to accept their fate. It did not matter. The outcome was never in doubt. The hegemony always won. Admiral, the censor officer's voice cracked with sudden alarm, detecting anomalies. Ships are emerging from slip space. Vareth turned sharply. What ships? Show me. The main display flickered. A map of the system appeared, showing the position of every Corvani vessel. On the far edge of the map, new contacts were appearing. 148. 12 vessels. The censor officer reported. Configuration unknown. They emerged from the Droth corridor. Impossible. Vrith stepped closer to the display. Nothing can navigate the Droth corridor. The gravity storms would tear any ship apart. They are transmitting identification signals. The officer's face had gone pale. They are human ships, Admiral. Silence fell across the command deck. Every officer stopped working. Every eye turned to the display. Humans. The word seemed wrong somehow. Humans were a joke among the galactic powers, a young species with primitive technology and foolish optimism. They had no military strength. They had no experience in real warfare. Yet here they were, 12 ships, Vrith said. Slowly, he began to laugh. The laugh grew louder until it echoed through the command deck. 12 ships. They sent 12 ships against 200. He wiped a tear from his eye. These humans are even more stupid than the stories say. Order Destroyer Squadron 9 to intercept and destroy them. This will not even delay our assault. The orders went out. 15 Corvani destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the human fleet. Each destroyer carried enough firepower to level a small city. 15 of them could reduce a moon to rubble. Vrith watched the tactical display with amusement. The human ships were ugly things, blocky and graceless, covered in strange angles and extra plating. Snorts. They looked like metal boxes welded together by children. Where were their elegant curves? Where was their precision engineering? These humans clearly knew nothing about proper ship design. The destroyers closed the distance, weapons locked on target. Squadron 9 reports ready to fire. The weapons officer announced. Destroy them, Vrith commanded. Make it quick. We have more important matters to attend to. The first salvo launched. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds streaked across space toward the human ships. Direct hits, dozens of them. Vrith nodded with satisfaction. Then his satisfaction died. The human ships were still there, damaged, yes, trailing smoke and sparks, but still. They're still moving, and now they were firing back. Admiral Squadron 9 reports heavy resistance. The human vessels have unusually strong armor. Their weapons are. An explosion cut off the officer's words. On the display, one of the Corvani destroyers had vanished, then another. The human ships moved in ways that made no sense. They did not hold formation. Each one acted alone, darting and weaving, yet somehow they coordinated their attacks perfectly. Get me a visual, Vrith demanded. The screen changed to show the battle. Directly, a human ship filled the frame. It had been hit at least 20 times. Holes covered its hull. Atmosphere leaked from a dozen wounds. Any Corvani vessel would have been crippled, but this human ship kept fighting. Its weapons kept firing. It turned directly toward a Corvani destroyer and accelerated. They are ramming, someone shouted. The human ship crashed into the destroyer at full speed. Both vessels exploded in a ball of fire. Viketh stared at the screen. He could not understand what he was seeing. Who would sacrifice their own ship so willingly? What kind of species threw away lives like ammunition? The battle lasted 1 hour. When it ended, all 15 Corvani destroyers were destroyed. The human fleet had lost 2 ships. The remaining 10 continued toward Valanthos, their ugly hulls scarred with damage but still functional. Admiral, the censor officer, whispered. What are your orders? Vrith did not answer immediately. He was still staring at the display, his perfect record, his guaranteed victory. Something had changed. He did not know what these humans were, but they were not the weak fools he had expected. All ships, he finally commanded. Battle formation. Target the human fleet with everything we have. The easy conquest had become something else. Vrith did not know the word for it yet. He had never needed to learn it. The word was war. The sky above the capital city burned with a new kind of fire. Commander Silith stood at the entrance of the underground bunker and watched 3 shapes fall through the atmosphere. They were not Corvani dropships. These vessels came down too fast, too steep. Flames wrapped around them like angry hands. No pilot could survive such a descent. They are crashing, Turth said. Beside her, his crystalline skin reflected the orange glow. Those poor souls. Silith said nothing. She had heard the impossible reports from orbit. Human ships had arrived. Human ships were fighting the Corvani fleet. She had not believed it at first. She had thought it was some trick, some last cruelty from the enemy, but the fighting was real. Explosions lit up the night sky like distant stars being born and dying. The 3 falling ships struck the ground 5 km from the city. The impact shook the earth. Columns of dust and smoke rose into the air. Silith expected silence. After that, she expected nothing to survive. Instead, she heard movement, engines, voices shouting in a language she did not recognize. Send scouts, she ordered carefully. This could still be a trap. The scouts returned within the hour. Their report made no sense. Commander, the lead scout, said. His voice trembled with something between fear and wonder. There are soldiers climbing out of the wreckage. Hundreds of them. They are already forming lines and moving toward the city. They carry weapons we have never seen before. They call themselves the Tan Expeditionary Force. Human. Silith breath. They request a meeting with our commander. They say they are here to help. Silith gathered 20 of her best fighters and walked out to meet the aliens who had fallen from the sky. The journey took 2 hours through ruined streets and collapsed buildings. Corvani patrols had pulled back for the night, confused by the chaos in orbit. It was the first time in Months that Valenthy could walk on the surface without being shot at. She found the humans near the edge of the blast zone. They had already set up a temporary camp. Lights blazed in the darkness. Soldiers moved with quick purpose, unloading supplies from the smoking remains of their ships. The vessels had been destroyed by the impact, yet somehow the humans had survived inside them. A tall figure approached Sileth. He wore heavy armor, covered in dirt and burn marks. His face was pale and smooth, nothing like the scales of the Corvani or the crystal of the Vanth, but his eyes were hard. They were the eyes of someone who had seen death many times. Commander Silith, the human's voice was deep. I am Colonel Marcus Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Force. We received your distress call. Sorry we took so long. Silith stared at him. She had prepared many things to say, questions about strategy, concerns about the orbital battle, practical matters about supplies and coordination. Snorts, all of those words vanished from her mind. You came, she said. You actually came. Chin nodded. We brought 1,200 soldiers. It is not much, but we will make it count. The fleet will keep the Corvani busy in orbit as long as possible. Our job is to turn the tide on the ground. 1,200. Sileth looked past him at the soldiers moving through the camp. They were smaller than she expected, shorter than Corvani warriors. No claws, no natural armor. They looked fragile compared to the enemy they had come to fight. The Corvani have 40,000 troops on this planet. You brought 1,200. A strained expression crossed Chen's face. It took Sileth a moment to recognize it as a smile. 1,200 humans, he said. That will be enough. The confidence in his voice should have seemed like madness, but something in his eyes made Sileth want to believe him. This man had crossed the galaxy and crashed his ship onto a burning world to help people he had never met. Normal logic did not apply to someone like that. Come, Chen said. Let me show you what we brought. He led her through the camp. Human soldiers saluted as they passed. Despite the long journey and the violent landing, they moved with energy. Some were already checking weapons. Others studied maps of the area. A medical team treated the wounded from the crash, working quickly and efficiently. Chen stopped beside a row of metal crates. He opened one and pulled out a weapon. It was larger than anything the Valenthy resistance carried. Heavy plasma repeater, he explained. Punches through Corvani armor at 200 m. We brought 500 of them. He pointed to another row of crates. Anti-vehicle rockets, explosives, communication gear, medical supplies, enough to equip your resistance fighters and give them a real chance. You brought weapons for us. We brought everything we could carry. Fleet did not have room for more troops, so we filled the space with equipment. Instead, Chen closed the crate. Your people know this world. They know where to hide, where to ambush, how to move without being seen. We will teach them how to fight like humans. Together we can make the Corvani bleed for every step they take. Sileth felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. It was painful, like blood returning to a numb limb. She had accepted death. She had prepared her people for the end. Now this strange small alien was telling her the fight was not over. Why? She asked. You owe us nothing. We have never met before. Your people will die here far from home for strangers. Why would you do this? Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was Softer, my species almost destroyed itself once, many times actually. We know what extinction looks like, we know how it feels when no one comes to help. He met her eyes when we heard your call. We did not discuss politics or strategy, we just came because someone had to, because we refused to watch another people die alone. Somewhere above them, explosions still flashed in the night sky. The human fleet was dying to buy them time. But in that moment, standing among aliens who had sacrificed everything for her world, Silith allowed herself to believe the outcome had seemed sealed, but the humans had come and nothing would be the same again. The war changed on the third day after the humans arrived. Corvani ground. Commander Heskin stood in his field headquarters and stared at the reports. They could not be correct. His forces outnumbered the enemy by more than 20 to 1. His soldiers were better trained, better equipped, stronger in every way. Yet the reports showed disaster after disaster. Patrol 7 has been destroyed. His adjutant reported 40 soldiers, no survivors. How Heskin demanded ambush in the western tunnels. The Valanthi used explosives to collapse the entrance behind our troops. Then human soldiers attacked from 3 directions. It was over in minutes. Heskin slammed his fist against the table. This was the 5th patrol lost today. The Valanthi had never fought like this before. They had always run away, hiding like frightened animals. Now they attacked. Now they set traps. Now they showed no fear. Humans had taught them well. 5 km away, Colonel Chen watched his soldiers rest. In a hidden bunker, they had been fighting for 72 hours. Sleep came in short bursts between battles. Food was eaten while walking. No one complained. This was what they had trained for. Colonel Lieutenant Reyes approached him. She was young, barely 25 years old. She had killed 17 Corvani soldiers since landing. Scouts report a supply convoy moving through Sector 8, lightly guarded. Chen studied the map. Take Squad 4 in. The fighters from Group 12, hit them fast. Take what you can, destroy the rest. Be gone before reinforcements arrive. Reyes nodded and left. Chen watched her go, feeling the weight of responsibility. He had brought these soldiers across the galaxy to die on a foreign world. Some already had. The crash landing had killed 83 of them. Before the fighting even began, more fell each day, but they were winning. Slowly, painfully, they were winning. The key was teaching them how to fight a different kind of war. The crystalline beings had never considered tactics like ambushes or sabotage. They had believed in fair fights and honorable combat. Chen showed them that survival mattered more than honor. The Corvani gave no mercy, so the Valanthi should expect none in return, and they learned fast. Their hatred of the invaders had been buried deep under their peaceful nature. Now it emerged like fire. Chen watched former poets and musicians become deadly fighters. They moved through the ruins of their cities with cold purpose. They killed without hesitation. War had changed them. Chen hoped they could find their way back when it was over. Commander Silith coordinated the resistance from a mobile headquarters. She moved every few hours to avoid Corvani detection. Human communication equipment let her stay in contact with every unit on the planet. For the first time, the resistance fought as one force instead of scattered groups. The power grid, Chen told her during a brief meeting. If we take it back, we can. Restore communications across the entire capital region. More importantly, it will show everyone that we can push the Corvani back. Morale matters in a war like this. The grid is heavily defended, Silath said. 300 Corvani soldiers guard the main station. Then we hit them with everything we have. The attack began at midnight. Human soldiers led the assault, while Valenthi fighters covered the flanks. Explosions lit up the darkness. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the streets. Chen commanded from the front, refusing to stay behind where it was safe. A leader should share the risks of their soldiers. His father had taught him that. His father had died in battle just like his grandfather. The Chen family had been soldiers for 5 generations. They understood that some things were worth dying for. The fighting lasted 4 hours. Corvani defenders fought hard, but they could not match the speed and coordination of the attack. Human tactics confused them. The Corvani expected enemies to hold positions and trade fire. Instead, the humans never stopped moving. They appeared from unexpected directions. They vanished before counterattacks could form. They fought like ghosts. By dawn, the power station was secure. Lights flickered on across the city. For the first time in months, Valenthi civilians hiding in underground shelters saw the glow and wept with joy. Chen did not celebrate. He lay in a medical tent, his chest torn open by a Corvani blade. The alien had nearly killed him during the final push. Only a desperate shot from a Valenthi fighter had saved his life. You will recover, the medic told him, but you need rest. You cannot fight for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Chen laughed weakly. The movement sent pain through his body. The battle will be decided in days, not weeks. He called Lieutenant Raised to his side. She had returned from the supply convoy raid with wounds of her own. A bandage covered half her face, where plasma had burned away the skin. You have command, Chen told her. Finish what we started, sir. That is an order, Lieutenant. Our people look to you now. The Valenthi trust you. Do not let them down. Above the planet, the battle in space continued. The human fleet had been reduced to 4 ships. All of them were damaged beyond normal repair, but they kept fighting, drawing Corvani warships away from the ground, preventing orbital bombardment. Every hour they survived was another hour for the forces below. Admiral Vryeth watched his losses mount and felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. He had committed his best ships to destroying the human fleet, yet somehow they endured. Their damaged vessels should have been helpless. Instead, they used their broken hulls as weapons, ramming Corvani ships in suicide attacks, exploding their reactors to take enemies with them. For the first time in his career, Vrith sent a message to High Command, requesting reinforcements. The response came back within hours. No reinforcements were available. The hegemony's other fleets were committed elsewhere. Vrith had to finish this conquest with the forces he had, but his forces were dying on the ground and in space. The humans and their Valenthi allies were bleeding. The mighty Corvani military dry. Every day brought new losses. Every night brought new attacks. The breaking point was coming. Vrith could feel it. He just did not know which side would break first. The order to retreat came on the 14th day. Admiral Vrith stood on his command deck and spoke the words he had never spoken before. All ships withdraw from the system. Ground forces begin evacuation immediately. His officers stared at him in shock. Corvani did not retreat. The hegemony did not abandon conquests. These were the foundations of their military doctrine. Admiral, his second officer began. High Command will. High Command will accept. Reality, Vrith interrupted. His voice was cold and tired. We have lost 107 warships. Our ground forces have suffered 40% casualties. The humans have reinforcements arriving within days. If we stay, we will be destroyed. He looked at the tactical display one final time. 4 human ships remained in orbit. 4 out of the original 12, all of them were barely functional. They drifted more than they flew. Their weapons fired slowly. Their engines failed regularly. By every measure, they should have surrendered long ago, but they had not. They had held the line for 2 weeks. They had bought time for the ground forces to turn the war around. Now a larger human fleet was racing toward Vanthos. 20 ships, 30, maybe more. Vrith's intelligence officers could not get an accurate count. It did not matter. The Corvani fleet could not fight any longer. Their ammunition was low. Their crews were exhausted. Morale had collapsed as word spread of defeats on the ground. For the first time in generations, Corvani soldiers feared their enemy. The evacuation took 3 days. Human forces harassed the Corvani at every opportunity, picking off stragglers, destroying supply transports, but they did not try to prevent the withdrawal. They were too tired, too few. They simply wanted the war to end. When the last Corvani ship jumped to Slipace, the people of Vanthos emerged from their hiding places. They came out of underground bunkers and collapsed buildings. They climbed from tunnels and caves, thousands of them, then tens of thousands. Their crystalline skin caught the light of their wounded sun. Many wept openly. Others simply stood in silence, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Corvani were gone. Their cities were in ruins. Their people were scarred, but they were free. Commander Silath walked through the streets of the capital, Valenth. Civilians reached out to touch her as she passed. She was a hero now. They said she had saved them all, but Silath knew the truth. She had not saved anyone. She had simply refused to give up long enough for the real saviors to arrive. She found Colonel Chen in a field hospital near the center of the city. He lay on a simple bed surrounded by wounded soldiers from both species. Medics had done what they could, but his injuries were severe. He would need months of treatment to fully recover. Colonel Silith knelt beside his bed. The Corvani have withdrawn. The war is over. Chen smiled weakly. Not over. They will come back eventually. They do not forget defeats. Then we will fight them again. Thanks to you, we know how. Around them, the wounded stirred. Human soldiers lay beside Valenthi fighters. They had bled together, suffered together. Boundaries between their species had faded during the long days of combat. Now they were simply survivors of the same war. How many? Chen asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Silith understood the question. 417 of your soldiers remain. The rest gave their lives for our world. Chen closed his eyes. 783 dead. Young men and women who would never see Earth again. They had followed him across the galaxy because they believed in something greater than themselves. He would carry their names in his heart forever. It was worth it. He said, tell me it was worth it. Silith took his hand. Her crystalline fingers were cold against his warm skin. Your People saved us, Colonel, not just our lives but our souls. We had forgotten how to hope. We had forgotten that courage still existed in the galaxy. You reminded us. Outside the hospital, the first human reinforcement ships entered orbit. Their arrival sparked celebrations across the planet. Fireworks exploded in the sky, mixing with the smoke of ruined cities. Music played for the first time in over a year. There had always been artists. Even in destruction, they found ways to create beauty. The news spread across the galaxy within days. A tiny human force had defeated the Corvani hegemony. 12 ships and 1,200 soldiers had saved an entire world. The story seemed impossible. Many did not believe it at first, but the evidence was undeniable. Reporters arrived from 100 worlds. They interviewed survivors. They recorded the testimonies of Valenthi, civilians and Corvani prisoners. They captured images of human soldiers standing guard over a planet they had nearly died to protect. Colonel Chen gave one interview before being evacuated to a hospital ship. Journalist asked him the question that everyone wanted answered: why did humanity sacrifice so much for strangers? Chen thought for a long moment before replying. When he spoke, his words were broadcast across the galaxy. We remember what it means when no one comes. Our history is full of moments when people cried for help and the world looked away. We will not be the ones who look away. If we have the power to help, we will help. If we have the strength to fight, we will fight, because that is who we choose to be. The interview ended. Chen was carried away for treatment, but his words remained. They reached worlds where oppressed peoples had accepted their fate. They reached systems where resistance movements had given up hope. They reached the halls of power where leaders had calculated that interference was too costly. Everywhere the message was the same. Humanity had come for the Valency. They would come for others. No one had to face darkness alone anymore. On Valanthos, Commander Silith began the long work of rebuilding. Humans helped where they could. The alliance between their species grew stronger with each passing day. New defenses were constructed, new ships were built. The Valanthi would never be helpless again. And across the galaxy, beings who had once been ignored started to reach out. Messages traveled toward Earth from dozens of worlds. Some asked for help. Some offered friendship. Some simply wanted to thank the strange small species that had proven something important. The outcome had been sealed. Everyone had known it. The powerful had accepted it. The weak had despaired. Then the humans came, and they reminded the galaxy that the outcome is never truly sealed until the last soldier stops fighting. The war for Thos was over, but the story of humanity was just beginning.